So, hi, I'm Matt Van Vliet, and I met Angela when we were working at a services based consulting company, and she joined as our CFO. What had you done before um, that company?
Prior, I had worked for another services company in consulting, and I had also done some IT consulting uh, for a software company. It was actually accounting software, so I had been doing that as well.
So, shortly after you joined, you decided we needed a new system and way of tracking projections. So, what led you to that conclusion?
So when I started, I was actually hired for one. It was at the time it was called Big Time. I was actually hired to implement that system. And that was a time tracking system. So when I was hired, I realized that we had one full-time employee that was doing what you guys referred to as projections. And projections was, at the time, a forecast of what or how much revenue we were going to have and how much expense we were going to have, so that as a whole, finance could make decisions, the owners could make decisions on what we were going to purchase, who we were going to hire, and so forth. The problem was this employee's whole job, 40 hours a week, was spent on this spreadsheet. And there was a lot of errors with it. So when I was brought in, it became very evident that we needed another process. In fact, if you remember, Matt, you and I would spend Sunday evenings going over the spreadsheet, trying to make sure that everything on it was correct. And almost always, every week, that wasn't the case. There would be some error. So I got to a point where I just could not continue down that road, and started talking to you about, how we could fix this problem. At that time, I found out that you had actually already started working on the problem, but really hadn't been able to come to fruition with anything that actually worked. So I just kept thinking about it and trying to figure out what the best way to get something to work, and wrote down, what I considered MVP, or my minimum viable product, and spoke to a developer, came up what that would be, and from there was able to create, at the time, what we called FBA.
So, in building that system, initially, what were the key outcomes? So, as a CFO, other than just reducing, time maintaining a spreadsheet, what were the business reasons for even keeping that spreadsheet?
Well, so I came from a background, like many finance or accounting people, that were used to looking at information that was 30 days old. And the one thing that I learned starting with that services company was you guys were looking at things really in advance. And that was a different way for me to be thinking. So the major thing was getting information accurate that we could look at forward, I guess, looking in advance, to be able to make decisions about what we could purchase, what we could invest in, who we could hire, but have the information be as accurate as possible. And so that was one of the major outcomes. Also, cash flow. We could use that projections to try to budget our cash flow, because as everyone knows, in a small company, cash flow is a huge issue. We also needed it for hiring, to know who we needed to hire, what types of people we needed to hire. So it served many purposes.
Yeah, and if, the interesting things, like, things were constantly changing, right? Which projects you thought you were going to win, which people were on what projects, did you hire people last week? What projects were they going to?
Well,
go ahead.
Not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but I think that was the other thing I didn't mention, is from the growth standpoint, we never had a way to really estimate what sales we might win. We had a spreadsheet again to look at that, assign a percentage maybe, but this system gave us a way to look at what would happen if, X amount of deals closed, or, and again, back to hiring, if those deals closed, who we would have to hire in order to fill those deals. And so it really touched several different parts of our company.
Yeah. So I think, before you joined, we had, the right insights that we needed to be thinking forward and not looking at historical data that didn't really tell us how, didn't inform us in making decisions. We had a couple attempts at automating that, failed. I think, as you joined, we got more clear on what we needed, as well as we succeeded at automating it. Not in a scalable way that many people could use, but it was good enough for our company and for what we needed.
Yeah, I think, as we said many times, it wasn't very pretty, but it did the job at the time. And we also found, as we worked on it, we also found that many other departments needed the system. Even though they didn't know they needed it at the time, they found that the information in there was very viable to them. For instance, recruiting started to use it because they could see the open positions they needed. Growth, as I stated, could tell what projects were close to being won or not won, or what had been projected that they needed to focus on. So it really became a tool for everybody. What started out as just finance.
Right. And with everything constantly changing, it was kind of the source of truth, where there was one place where everything was all integrated and up to date. It was interesting because we ended up using it as a way of kind of managing the business beyond just the individual decisions. As an example, if you wanted to hire somebody for a position, you could come to the leadership team with one of two things. This is for a person that is in the projection, or a position that's in the projection, or it's a strategic hire that I think we should make anyway. If it's a strategic hire, then it goes through that type of a decision-making process, and we would look at the rest of the data to say, all right, do we think we're in a position to make a strategic hire, and is that the right thing to do? If it wasn't a strategic hire, we used a system where, if you weren't willing to forecast the position the person was going to be on and commit to, we're going to win that, even if we haven't gotten all the contracts yet, then we wouldn't recruit for it and hire it. So it ended up being a check and balance that was built in to the organization, so that we knew that we knew what bets we were making as strategic hires and what bets we were making as part of growing the business. And of course, sometimes those things could be wrong, and maybe we didn't win a position we thought we would, but at least we made the decision based on the best data, and it was integrated across the departments.
The other thing is, you talk about that, is we also were able to see what changed. As you said before, things were constantly changing. Whereas on that spreadsheet before, they changed, but we never knew why. And with this system, we were able to go back week over week and compare and say, okay, why did we not hit what we thought? What was it that was different? Did somebody not work the hours we thought? Did they take PTO? Did we not close the deal we thought? So it was, it made us run our business better as well. And it also helped us get our projections better each time. I think it helped us hone that process down.
Yeah. So one of the things, we're talking a lot about what the system did for us, but it was also a cadence. Angela mentioned that we met every Sunday night to make sure the data was clean. But that's because every Monday we met to see what the variance was. So once we had a system, we didn't have an accurate system. We didn't have to go meet to clean up data. But every Monday we could come in and look across the organization and say, what changed? Are we projecting to be better off or worse off than we thought we were last week. And, based on that, what actions should we take? What should we be focusing on to get better? So there was a cadence of people putting their actuals into the system, people estimating their deals and getting them accurate, people looking at the staffing. So that cadence and regular structure made it so that we could manage the business, and we always had the data we needed in front of us.
Yeah, I think people got tired of hearing look at projections. But it pretty much was what we used to run the company. So it was interesting.
So it's interesting. And it's not that we didn't have a full accounting system. And we did, actuals, and we put things, we used QuickBooks at the time. But when you compared our QuickBooks, months, once they closed, let's say a month or two, like in the past, right? So you go look back 2 months and you finally got all your books closed and all your details in. The comparison of that to our projection was, less than a percentage off, right? So by constantly looking at it and reviewing it and trying to get better and better at it, even though it was an imperfect science, we got pretty good at projecting. We knew, for the month we were executing, what we were going to make in that month.
We knew where to make adjustments. I think that was the biggest thing. We could tell, at least for me from the finance, I knew how to make changes along the way instead of waiting. I couldn't, as you've said several times, you can't affect the past. But if you know what's going on currently, then you can make changes for the future. So, and that was really a different way of thinking, as I stated before, for me, because in finance, most of the time you're always looking backwards, not forward. So that's really changed my outlook and the way that I run business now.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So since this, we've sold that services business, and you've started your own business. That is a services business. So tell us a little bit about that and kind of what you looked for in having a tool to help run that business.
So we did sell, and the first thing I said when we started the new service business was, I need to have the same tool. So that's basically how we came up with recreating, not exactly the same, but something very similar. And we wanted it to be better than the system that we used before. FBA is what we had called the prior system. And although it was good, it wasn't exactly user-friendly from a user interface standpoint. That was one of the biggest complaints that we had. So we wanted to make sure this system was user-friendly. The biggest thing that I found, I would say that I always felt like I was running my business blind, because I couldn't tell where we would be in 6 months from now. And what I mean by that is, if I wanted to make a new hire, or I wanted to project how many hires I was going to have for the year, or who I wanted to invest in, is from like education, or I wanted to just get an office space. Without any of that information in front of me, I couldn't make those decisions. So it was vital that be the first thing that we do after starting the company. It was imperative that I have that system right away. And so that's really what we started on.
So rather than build another in-house system to solve that, we partnered and created Gantry, right? A separate software company that's actually focused on this problem. One of the things in doing that, I looked at other software products, I know you did as well, to see if there was anyone else that was solving this problem in the way that we're solving it. And I particularly in the area of projections, just couldn't find anyone that was really thinking about it the way we were thinking.
No, and I think, there are companies out there that do projections, but not along the same lines as what we're trying to, I guess, from the information standpoint. There are companies that can project a project for you, but we're trying to project for the whole company. And so when I want information back, I want it in the form of a P&L for that company so that I can literally see the revenue, cost of goods sold, and the bottom line for my company. And right now, most of what I've seen in the marketplace is more project-based. And although that is helpful, it's not as helpful as, based on the company.
Yep. So, with Gantry, we were able to start and build software from the ground up with infrastructure just designed to do exactly what we wanted to do. So that's been great in building that product and being able to solve some of these problems.
I also think it's been good that we have had the experience from the other system that we built, because with Gantry, we can go ahead and implement the recruiting side of things and the growth side of things that we found helpful while we're integrating the projection side of it. And I think that the more firms that see those different, sides of things, the more they'll see what the benefits are.
Yeah, I think, it's, if you take the lessons learned in the past and look at, now we've formed Gantry. I think ultimately what we want is to have a set of data between that sales, recruiting, delivery, and finance can all use, that's integrated and consistent with each other. That you're spending all of your time making decisions in the future based on your best understanding of today, and not trying to go root cause analysis and figure out what happened in the past. So as we build the system, you can see the history of everything, every state the project was ever in. If you thought you had 3 people and then you needed 4 and then you went back down to 2, you can see every state and you can compare what that project looked like a year ago or a month ago to what it looks like today. And you can see exactly what changed and exactly what happened. And I think not having to spend time researching and trying to figure out what happened just frees up leaders to lead and be actually solving problems instead of just trying to collect data or understand the problem.
No, I totally agree. I think we're trying to make this system as intuitive as possible. And I don't think we've thought of everything, but I think we've thought of a lot of things. And I'm hoping that as people use it, we are able to create even, more things. I know we've implemented the APIs, which I think are going to be very helpful for the companies. And eventually, I hope we have a lot of the actuals in there as well for the companies.
Yep. So Angela mentioned the APIs. Anything that you can do through the front end of the system user interface, you can also do through a programming interface. So, for example, Angela mentioned actuals. If you have a timesheet system, you can use that within Gantry as we launch Gantry timesheets. But if you have another timesheet system, you can integrate it and call through the APIs in order to get your actuals into the system. Similar with expenses or invoices or what have you.
Yeah, I hope payroll, HR, anything, actually.
Yeah, so one of the things being able to kind of start from scratch and build it with modern software techniques, we were able to build APIs, have everything be effective dated. Ultimately the back end is like a time machine. You can go back to any point in time and understand what was happening. And then the front end is designed, to make it very easy for users to use it, as well as power users to be able to see exactly what's happening, across the company. So
I think it's nice also that we can do it by role. It's not just, we had talked about this. I don't think we ever were able to accomplish this in the old system, but in the Gantry version, I think we've come up with being able to assign a role so that different people have access to different things, but everyone in the company can still use the system in a way that works for them.
Right. So if you're the CFO or the owner, you may be able to see all data. But if you have a new account manager, they may only be able to see certain accounts, or they may be able to only work within certain areas. So they may not be able to add employees, but they can use the existing employees to staff them on projects. So different roles being able to do different things in the system, and being able to have multiple people working in the data instead of just one, but have the integrity that it's all coming together into one place, I think is powerful.
Yeah. So.
So we just wanted to give kind of an overview of how we got to launching Gantry, some of our backgrounds of the things we ran through, and why we believe that this is really essential for people running a services business to be able to focus on the things that they can control and not be spending their time on collecting data or trying to understand the problems that they have. So thanks, Angela. Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody should check it out. And anyone that has questions, please get a hold of us.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.